So we want to thank Oren for doing this for us. Just let us know when. I know, you have my phone. I thought I forgot my phone.
You were ready. Ready when you are.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Hold on. Oh wait. It's not working.
Maybe I should go on the other side.
No, you're good.
Over
You're
here.
good. You're good.
Aloha. Aloha. Mahalo for joining us today, Monday, August 21st, for our third of 3 Maunakea series. This one here is our vanguards and our Nakia. This is the panel where we want to talk about what happened on Maunakea before it actually happened, because there was a lot of activities that went on before Lanakila went and stopped. The construction, before Andre got us all set up and prepared to be there, before Kalehua came. So there was a lot of things that occurred that allowed our presence on the Mauna to occur the way it occurred. Aloha. Direct, non-violent action. And that's what we wanted to do, and we have so much to thank these guys for, and so many more that aren't here today. But we are very thankful that Lanakila is on island, and that they all have openings in their schedule for us to join us tonight. Also, besides our 3 panelists, we have Candace Fujikane from UH Manoa. She is like Lucy Gay. From the windward side, but they love the leeward side. And so they help us whenever possible, because what they do has helped us in many ways. So tonight we're not only going to speak about the Mauna, we're also going to talk about what's recently happened, the tragedy in āina. And we're also going to talk about our vai. So we have much to discuss. And so before we get started, we want to thank Ahupua who invited us to have this event. And for Lucy Gay and Danny and Janai Kili'ikulu, professor, for allowing us to be here at the Leeward Community College, Moku in Maili. So if we could, we're going to show Ahupua.
What is a pillar? A pillar is a mountain. What is a pillar? A pillar is an altar. What is a pillar? A pillar is a rock. What is a pillar? A pillar is a kanaka. Kako no. All of us. Aloha kako. Welcome to Kūkulu, a tribute to the Pillars of Mauna a Wakea. This is the 14th exhibit since 2018, each one featuring photographs and artwork of the Maunakea movement as the piko, the center, the sealant, the beacon, and the unifier of our āina in this time, and then expanding to highlight the people, places, issues and movements within each exhibit's location. Maunakea education and awareness extends a sincere mahalo to the Waianae community members, Nakia'i, Nakukulu, the protectors and pillars, and to Leeward Community College for accepting the invitation to host this display entitled Pūlama ya Āina, a photographic collection of Waianae's history and ongoing efforts to protect and steward the Waianae Moku. May this exhibit and the accompanying presentations, as well as the present exhibits on Hawaii Island, in California, and in New York, serve to encourage, inspire, and activate our people to rise up, speak up, and stand up always for Maunakea and all sacred, storied, and special places in and beyond Hawaii. E nā kūkulu, aloha āina, e hu e, hu.
Without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to, okay. I'm sorry. Let me go ahead and introduce our panelists for our streaming audience, the first time for our people here again. So here we have Lanakila, Magauil, and he is the founder of Hoa, Hawaii. He's also a kumuhula, a Maunakea, and also on the Maunakea Stewardship and Oversight Authority. Lanakila. Next to Lanakila, we have Perez. And so Andre, I mean, these guys really have more than we actually have time to say the things that they do. But he was an organizer of Hawaii Unity and Liberation Institute, what more of us know as Huli. So if you're on the Mauna, you know Huli. But he's one of the organizer of that, and he brought together a whole lot of people. He prepared the community for what may happen up there. He provided the facilitation and coordination for all of the donations and its proper distribution and storage of it, so much more than I can even fathom. And so some of this is to kind of get behind your folks' titles and to actually what you folks were thinking and doing that got us up there. And then last but not least is Kalehua Krug. And so he is an educator. He's po'okumu of Kawaihona of Kanahawao. He's a Hawaiian immersion Olelo Hawaii advocate. He's also an educator, a musician, kakao mori. And so as you can see, his kakao in his face. And he's also part of Ka'ohewai, like Andre. And they're all cultural practitioners as well. And then we have our moderator, Candace Fujikane. And she's one of the earlier Kahea board members when Kahea was enlightening the rest of our community about what was happening on the Mauna, about why we needed to protect the Mauna and to get involved and to go to the various meetings. For me, this preceded Lanakila's action, Andre's action, and Kalehua's action. And it was amazing what they did because it was 3 people plus their board. But with all of the advertisement and their web, you would think that they had a staff of 20. But that's what happens when you have good people that know what they're doing and know how to do it. She's also a UH Manoa professor and an author. Candace, Fujikane.
Thank you so much. It's kind of amazing to have 3 pillars of the community, you know, pillars of leadership here, and a little bit fangirling here because each one has made tremendous contributions to the Lahui and the movement forward for the Lahui. And I'm thinking about Lanakila. Again, I love hearing Kaho'okahi talking story about you and saying that he was in awe when you threw your body at the first truck that tried to start construction on the Mauna. And we were all watching social media when you were actually trying to evade the law enforcement officers who were pushing you further and further in the mountains. And I remember your caption was, you said, we are just like the American Indian tribes who were forced into the mountains by the cavalry. And I think that put everything into perspective for a lot of people as far as like our understanding of what was happening when we were on Oahu and we were watching on Hawaii Island. And you know, the other, I was thinking also about how Andre was at Standing Rock and he was learning there nonviolent direct action. He brought that training to Hawaii and trained us so that we would be prepared when we went to Maunakea. And that kind of preparation, I think, helped to stabilize us and to help us to stand strong. Because, you know, at these times of like when these big events were happening, these crises were happening, a lot of times people feel lost, and I think each person here brought the leadership that helped to organize the community and help to guide the community. So Andre always there, like, you know, building a solar generator on Maunakea, or now with what's happening on Maui, transporting tents to Moku. I mean, always there on the vanguard, on the front lines, doing what needs to be done so that we can move forward. And Kalehua Krug, you know, has been such an advocate for Aloha Hawaii in a way that's been incredibly powerful. And what I've been really struck by is the way Ka'ohewai brings ceremony back into this struggle. Like at Kaho'olawe, when they had to bring back makahiki, where they brought makahiki back to Kauaula in Lahaina and on Maunakea. Ka'ohewai at Red Hill was a very important way for people to understand their spiritual kind of role in that struggle. So I'm wondering if the 3 of you could talk a little bit about how you came to your role in the struggle in each of these cases and how you continue to move forward.
Aloha kākou.
Aloha.
Mahalo for having me here. I come from Moku, Moku. I grew up in an area called Ahupua, which is Mauka Honoka'a town and the north face of Mauna, Wakea. I grew up in the river, in the river of Ahupua, whose waters come directly down from the Mauna. I've always had a pilina to this place. You know, as a young boy, sometimes we're helping up on the ranches up Mauka, and then other than that, being down in Waipi'o was kind of my tuvahi, but just kind of knowing that these tuvahi kapu were in my Moku, as you said, build that pilina, I always had that relationship there. I am a product of the Hawaiian Charter School movement. Really. I'm a graduate of āina, which is the very first Native Hawaiian public charter school. I graduated in 2004, so I only had 4 years of it, too. So I kind of come from a position of being the fortunate of that receiving generation, that being able to become, in some cases it was kind of like guinea pigs of what it is, what's going to happen if you start educating Kanakas from when we're young. And that's from many of the work from many of you in this room, help to establish these kind of things. So I'm kind of the product of that. And I only had 4 years of it, so these other ones coming up. So for myself, when it comes to what brought me to the mountain more, of course, this is my personal relationship, just living on there and always hearing the stories growing up about the Mauna. I think I only visited the Mauna maybe 2 or 3 times as a kid when I was young, and that was only to go up like visitor center, go play snow. And that's when the snow used to come down like visitor center. Right? Other than that, you know, was always kind of told, but we don't really go up there. That's really the most common tradition for Maunakea, is that we don't go up there. And when I was fortunate when āina opened its doors in 2000, that's when I went to school. āina is located in Waimea. When you go to Waimea, there's the whole mountain. Honoka'a, you just start to see the tip a little bit, but Waimea, you see the whole. And at Kano, I was exposed to much more mo'o level, much more in depth. You know, we was kind of knew, oh yeah, Poriahu the snow goddess. Then you hear all the other mo'o level that come along with that. And I remember as a young person already starting to hear these, and of course our sciences and everything we're learning about our mountains. And I remember starting to question these giant buildings up there already as a young person. Just hearing the mo'olelo, and this is long before TNT or anything was on our radar, but just hearing about how sacred the Mauna was, of course learning about how watersheds work, and then learning about even conservation and all the political status or legalities of land use. We just started a question like, well, how the heck did these things get up there? And I remember probably when I was in my late teens, the first time I actually went to the summit, and actually being there and witnessing these giant machines and hearing the constant hum and seeing all the construction equipment and these giant machines that move things all about. And it's like, rah, to try and pule with all this happening, that's is eha. So I was like maybe 19, 20 when the word started coming, started hearing about this TNT gonna come up the mountain. Gonna be the 14th telescope, the biggest of them all, one of the biggest telescopes in the world. And I remember just like, what the hell, no way. And through that, to hear Antipua case and her ohana got involved a little more on a legal level. And that through her, I was dancing with her, I was one of her students. And through her is how a lot of us in our community started to actually hear more of the legalities of what was happening up there. And was just drawn to learn more, to get involved, to participate. And then hearing about all the others who have been part of this, for a long time, Uncle Kuching, you have so many others, Auntie Aloha Pishoda, and many others who've been involved in legal levels trying to protect the mountain for decades. And after hearing all those efforts, and seeing all the court cases fail, and then to hear that they come in for do the groundbreaking ceremony. It's like, it's for a number of us. I remember the car ride up there. It was me and a couple of my brothers and titas, and we're driving up there like, because the call was, we're gonna come, we're gonna do pule at the bottom, and they will see us. I was like, I don't know if I can just, why? But that was the instruction. But I remember I was like, you know what, we're gonna go up. We're going to go up higher. And we got visitor center. And I always went on lift her name. When we got to up higher, many others came up, but they went in to go do aha or do pule at the second altar. And there's a few of us out there by the road because we had come up earlier. And then came the caravan. The caravan of all the dignitaries and all these special guests coming up. And this is in October of 2014. And I remember seeing it, like, wow, this sucks. And I'm going to lift her name today because no one ever knows this, but the very first kanaka that jumped in front of a car was Auntie Janira Esquera from Honoka'a. She jumped in front that first big old bus, crying, like, no, you're not going to do this to our Mauna. And goes, Auntie, No, me and my brother been run over there and it was and then that was the spot. I had never thought about stepping in front of a car or stepping in front of a bus. But from there, I know the tensions got really high right there. It was hard. It was how we cried, we win, everything, and then all of the popo was kind of real gentle with us, move on the side, and they all went through. But when Uncle Kalani came back out from he heard the commotion, he reminded us about, remember where we are. We are on our vahika. How we carry ourselves. We do not want to desecrate this place. And so it shifted us very quickly. But we knew we still got to do something. The rest is on YouTube. To share some of what got us to that point was seeing these people and hearing these different steps that just started on I mean, and again, everything that snowballed from there is like, well, this is what happens when indigenous children are rooted in who we are and where we are. And also, I remember at one point thinking, what good is all this that we teach if we're not willing to stand for it? I'm not going to allow my kumus to become liars. Oh, it's so sacred, but we do nothing. Absolutely nothing. We're going to hold them out. And I myself have been at kumu teaching at my odes in Monaca'a, a Hawaiian studies teacher, teaching the mo'olelo of Maunakea to my keiki. How am I going to tell them how important this mountain is? How sacred and the vai and how it's important to manam these places, and then something like this is going to happen, and I go, oh, sad, yeah. We've seen that happen too much times, 13 times, yeah. Or we lost the case, so I don't know. Let's try something else. And so that, of course, that was October, and then when it came March 2015, and we got the call that machines are moving. At this time, we had invoked and set a makahiki ceremony, that earlier in 2014. And this makahiki ceremony, no, it's not a traditional, it was a contemporary ceremony that we called together, and there's a whole longer story, that's a whole lecture in itself. But we called this together, something to be able to open up to a wide spectrum of our Moku of Hawaii. And it required an offering of our bodies to sacrifice through running, to carry a prayer for 4 days around the entirety of Hawaii Island. So we call this the Makaiki Ahupua āina holo. Whole nother session for that one. But in that, when we were running for the focus of praying for the health and well-being of our āina and our community, and therefore we dedicated this ceremony to the makahiki to then invoke the mana of lono, the restorative energy that is lono, and looking at this va and this time of restoration. So with that, we were in this makahiki season after that ceremony in November. Coming March, oh, it's makahiki time, TMT coming up, what we gonna do? We're not supposed to engage like that kind, so we just pull it and pull it out. In 2015, they saw one of the biggest snows, and some 6 feet deep the TMT got covered in a overnight snow. Mahalo, because that gave us about a week that conjured us to then go and or gave us that opportunity to pani our makahiki. But in that we knew in our na'au, like, what now? We put the lono away, so we feel comfortable to engage, but who disciplines us in that? That is cool. For a long time, everybody's scared of cool. Yeah? Western demonization of all the elements that is cool has existed for a long time. Everyone's scared. Sacrifice, God of war is all you ever hear. Yeah? So of course, but we realized, no. We gotta rise. And so in that time, we cultivated a new aha to awaken and rise our ku energies. And that took place at Kikiakoi or Pelekane Bay below Kūkulu, the temple of state. The temple that began the kingdom of Hawaii. And it's at this place that we had the very first gathering meeting. I put out one little thing on Facebook, and the next morning 5 people showed up. And we sat there. That was our first meeting of, if they bring machines up the mountain, what are we going to do? And when the first kahea went, when I got that call 7 o'clock in the morning for machines moving, and I ended up running up the mountain, you know, on those, before Facebook Live, you had to make video and we'll post and we'll upload. When I put the kahea, the first people who came to the mountain were runners. Because we just went go put our bodies to all of this for run, for pulling for the land, I can come up the mountain. So I share this as a segue to open this up of how we are a living people. We create ritual when it's needed to invoke our spirits, tangent and tied to the continuity and the foundation of our kupuna. We're able to pull these things from our collective past to serve us and guide us and strengthen us to ho'omau. And some people like question, oh, that's not real. Well, since we did it, we saw the largest mobilization of our people in our history. So, may not be historically accurate, but I'm not trying to do that. We're trying to activate our spirits for us here and now. And that has given permission for many more of us to step in where we felt we were not allowed, or because the protocols weren't set for that. So we have to create the next space for this VA that will be able to elevate more of us to be able to feel comfortable to get that foundation to step into those more disciplined practices. But in that is re-engaging us in our vahikapa, reintroducing us as being the key species, the key human species of the ecology of the Hawaiian Islands. That's what makes us relevant. That's what makes Hawaiians and our culture relevant, because we are an integral part of the health and well-being of how this āina works. We are the template of human interaction with this environment. So what brought me to the Mauna? Doing my duties as a native species to this planet. So I guess that's my introduction.
Aloha kako. Aloha. You know, it's a good question, and I would say, you know, for me, when I was young, I come from a dysfunctional, poor drug family, lots of violence, and so I didn't have a pathway to anything better, really. So right out of high school, I joined the military. I spent 8 years in the military. And I was so convinced that I wasn't like going to go to college that I turned down the GI Bill. I think I might be one of the very few military vets who came out of the military with no college benefits, because I was convinced that I wasn't going to college. So I told him, I don't need that, I don't need that. And I had to sign a waiver, in fact. But so I was in the military, and I was a typical local boy on Kauai. I grew up fishing, diving, surfing. I'm from Koloa, the uplands of Koloa, in a place called Oma'o. Grew up in my grandmother's house, and we spent a lot of time in the mountains of Kahili, Mount Kahili, and the streams and rivers, and you know, just a typical kid. And when I was in the military, of course, I experienced racism and prejudice. I got out of the military on June 19th, 2006. I remember it was Father's Day. It was my son's birthday, and I had nothing. I didn't have any money. I had a little truck, a little Toyota truck, and I had some fishing and diving gear. So I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I got out, I never have nothing. I didn't have a plan. So I packed up my fishing and diving gear, and I came down to the Waianae coast. I had $5, I remember, because I bought a Big Mac with that $5. And then I went to the Waianae coast, and I was staying, moving around at Kea'au Beach Park, and just kind of camping and fishing and diving for the summer of 2006. And but that time was very transformative for me, because I came from kind of the quiet, I would say the quiet country of Koloa, to the Waianae coast, which is much different. The demographics are much different, and the social impacts are much different. And it was kind of in the heyday of the ice epidemic, 2006. And I stayed out on the beach, and I was, running around with different friends of mine. But it was, to me, that was a transformative time, because I remember there's a couple of key things that happened. One, I was very proud, so I was just, I had a lot of things that I had from when I was in the military. I put all my stuff in one self-storage, and little by little I would go and sell them off. Like, I had a camera, I had a couple gold rings or a chain. I was selling things just to survive. And then I finally ran out of things to sell, so I finally broke down and went and got food stamps. And if you was homeless, you do an emergency application. They give you $198 right there on the spot, HIPAA money. So I got the $198, and I went back down to the beach where I was staying. And by the next morning, my food stamp was stolen. And so it was a really rough time for me. But I also realized that, wow, people are struggling here on the Waianae coast. It's not easy. And I had an experience where I was at Lanakila, right in front of Second Save. There's a really small Napa Auto Parts. And I've told this story before. It was 96. I still had my truck. I ended up losing the truck eventually, but at that time I still had them. So I pulled into the Napa. I had to buy something. And I saw this little girl, Makai, of the highway, coming over the sand dune. And I was a little concerned because I was a young, like maybe 8 or 9 year old girl, and she had 2 water jugs. I was concerned for her crossing the highway, so I waited. And she looked both ways. She came across the highway from the beach and came to the Napa store. And I remember she came in. I remember the look on her face was one of, anxiety, I guess, discomfort. She came into the Napa store, and I walked in with her, and she went to the clerk and said, "Can we fill up some more water?" And I remember the clerk, I think was a local Japanese guy, and he kind of snapped at her and said, "I told you guys, you cannot keep coming back here. This is the last time." And I just remember the look on her face, And for me, it was very impactful, that moment in time, transformative, when I realized, like, wow, homeless Hawaiians are begging for water in our own community, And I just, I watched a little girl fill up her water jug from the spigot and then went back across the highway. Well, that stayed with me, And so I spent a couple of years living on the Waianae coast, eventually Makaha Cabanas. I lived there from late 2006 not 2006, sorry, 10 years off, 96. I got out in 96. Wow, it's way back. I never go far back enough. I got out in 96, and it was the summer of 96 I spent on the beaches, and then eventually into the Makaha Cabanas. My son, my wahine and my son's mom was from Lanakila, and so we moved into Makaha Cabanas and was, spent a couple of years there just struggling, working odd jobs, not jobs that don't pay a whole lot. And I knew that for me, if I didn't strive for something better and higher, I could get stuck at this low level of hustling and working shitty jobs, and it would be really hard to get up. So in 1998, I had been out for 2 years. I saw this ad for this job. It was the first, I think it was the first cultural monitors. Now there's a lot of cultural monitors going on for construction. Kaho'olawe Island Reserve Commission was advertising for cultural monitors. And I thought, I would really like that job, So I applied myself. Long story, but I did research. I went to the libraries. I found Kaho'olawe use plan, Kaho'olawe restoration plan. I went kind of spied into the office to see what kind of people was, how they dress. And I applied for the job, and I think there was about 134 applicants for 4 jobs, and I got one of them. I don't know how I got them, but I pulled it plenty. So I started off as one of the original cultural monitors for Kaho'olawe in 1998. And it was myself, Kalehua Hiva, an uncle named Charlie Lindsay, Lahaina family, Lindsay from Lahaina, and a guy named Bill Frampton. We were the first. And that part, so I spent 7 years, Kaho'olawe, as restoration, initially a cultural monitor, and then moved into a kind of forestry restoration technician. And it was during that time I met kind of all the movers and shakers of the movement. Because I would go to PKO access, almost every access if I could. And then on the Kirk side, restoration, a lot of volunteers were coming. And so it was there that I met Dr. Anthony Blaisdell, Solinia Hill, John Osorio, you know, many people, Dave Allen McGregor, Emmett Aluli, of course. And I kind of got to meet, you know, sort of the solid foundation of the Hawaiian movement at that time. And then after a couple of years of working Kaho'olawe, Kalehua gets hired, I think it was 2001, as the cultural manager for Kaho'olawe. And so the exposure to, you know, all these leaders and these Aloha āina and Kia'i, even though we weren't using that term at that time, was important for me through Kaho'olawe as a crossroads where lots of people go. And then I got to be really close with Kalehua, and he taught me a lot of chants and prayers and kind of mentored me, pushed me to go to school, bro, you gotta go to college. Gave me books, he was giving me Franz Fanon and Paulo Freire and, you know, these kind of like fundamental, you know, social change, much more than that, like radical political books, you know. And so in a way I was going to college. College was going through me before I went to college. I remember I read this book called Queer Theory, and I was like, kind of blew my mind, you know. And so it was exposure, really. And then in 2005, I left Kaho'olawe, moved to Oahu with the idea I'm going to go to college. I like to try to go to college. Kalehua was always pushing me. And I came up here and I didn't go to college right away. Because one, I met a wahine named Camille Kalama at the palace at an event her hui had organized against the Striker Brigade. And I met Auntie Vicky Takamine there and many others. But once I moved here, we started going to Kekuni's house Thursday nights. What's Thursday nights, Leonard? Thursday nights, we was going to Kekuni's and learning and planning and strategizing. There's a lot of intellectual discussion around sovereignty and independence. And so, you know, got to get close to work a lot with Auntie Lynette here, Uncle Sparky, you know, many people. You could walk into Kekuni's house on a Thursday night and you wouldn't know who would be there, but it would be important people. And we learned, we were young, you know, and we were in the midst of, you know, working with Bumpy, with Skippy, and we just learned through kind of organic, getting tossed into the organizing, you know, of all kinds of things. And then I became a charter school teacher too for a little while. Resource teacher. I wasn't, you know, certified or anything, but I was a resource teacher for 4 years. But I got thrust into teaching social studies. So all of this cumulatively kind of gave me a consciousness. But I would say the main transformative part of my consciousness raising happened here on the streets of Waianae, because I was seeing all the impacts of the ice epidemic, a lot of crime and theft and violence, fights, you know, and I realized, I just came to like, there's a better future for our people, you know, there's something better than just this. And as I began to develop my analysis further, I realized we don't have power. You know, we don't have power over our land, over our resources like water. You know, we don't have power, and it became a really important thing for me to think about how to build power. And when you're powerless and you don't have resources, the only way to build power is to organize people and to assert that power. You know, so organizing became a big thing. And then, of course, that led me here on Oahu. You know, we were fighting FedRec for a decade, and then, of course, Maunakea pops up. And initially, I was reluctant. I was like, you know, a friend of mine was trying to tell me, hey, we got to get involved in Maunakea. And I was like, how? They're here. We're here. They're there. What are we going to do? Like, what can we do? You know, it's kind of digging my heels until 2015. And then I decided, you know what, I gotta go, maybe I should go to the Mauna, and then I can understand what our entry point is. How do we get involved? So I did. Me and Kalehua went up the day after the big arrest, 2015, and met Lanakila. We stayed for 4 or 5 days, and we kept coming back. And it took me going to Maunakea to kind of remember that my mother come from the Big Island. My mother was born in Hamakua in Honomu, you know, in the house in Honomu. And my mom's ohana is from that side. And my mom has siblings. They were all adopted, but my mom has 4 siblings on Hawaii Island. So it took me kind of going there to kind of remember, like, hey, wait, you know, my mom was born in this Moku that Maunakea sits in. And, you know, I'm not, I actually started my kind of life on Hawaii Island. We lived in Hilo. I went to Hilo Union School, kindergarten, and then in 8th grade we moved to Kauai to my grandmother's house. So once I kind of was able to wrap my head around that, like, okay, I get some kuleana, at least to Kokua, you know. I wasn't raised here, but I have some roots here. So we got involved in Maunakea, and then, you know, 2015, we know that story. And then Standing Rock pops up, and I thought it was important to go to Standing Rock to learn about big struggle, nonviolent direct action, fundraising, organizing, you know, and it was there that I met a lot of people who had knowledge and skills in those areas. And so we came back home and we started Huli, myself, Kaho'okahi, Uncle Walter Riddy, Camille, Ilima Long, Kalehua Ka'eo and his wife Kahele, and Nalani Balutsky from UH. And it was just a small little, our idea was that we just want to train people in organizing and activism. And so we just started to do it. You know, we never have money. You know, we just started to do what we can and have these workshops and prepare for the worst, which kind of came, you know, and might come again even more worse. So, you know, it was really just being in the presence of important kupuna who were doing things, who were moving, who were eleo, you know, was really transformative. That's about it.
Mahalo ke kolo ana e ko wai anae a kaukahali ka kela mo wā manu o Maunakea. E mo lelo me ke ilo ki ia kāna wai. I've been thinking, while they're talking, I'm thinking, what avenue I would take to describe, because I don't feel like I have the experiences that these guys are coming from. I started off, my grandmother is from Lanakila. Originally, the family is a Duvashau family from Mokai, and but they lived 4th Road. And I remember spending my summers out here. And one of the things that I share with people is that, you know, I'm kind of a whiter shade Hawaiian, and that's significant for me. That changes the way a Hawaiian sees themselves. And I'm just saying, you know, to see all my cousins and to look in the mirror, I'm like, what the hell happened to me? You know, it's like a powder donut. But that's something that drives the way that you engage and how you see the world and how you see your responsibility. So I was springboarded onto a trajectory of trying to figure out, if I'm Hawaiian, what does that mean to me? Because you know, it's not visible to me in the mirror. And even as I get through life, my grandmother was a really big part of my life. My parents were really busy working, and so my grandparents picked me up from school every day, and you know, I spent a lot of time with him, and learned about family stories, the responsibilities that they carried in their church, a lot of the things that I believe had culture embedded in it. And so it became really interesting. I love all the stories that came from the family. I love the stories of place. And then when people engage in storytelling, it's like my ears were just hungry to hear stories of us. Because it helped me to better understand who I was. And so getting to that through education, and my parents worked hard to send me to really good schools, institutions, and I got, you know, to Kamehameha that provided me a little bit of ease. Finally, I got some ease, because when you tell people you go Kamehameha, they're like, oh, you're Hawaiian. And so that kind of fell off my shoulders a little bit in that moment in time, and I could actually feel it happen, and I liked it. But that didn't necessarily mean that that's actually what was taking place in me. So I continue on this journey got to play football, go to California to play football, and then my dad gets sick. And so 2 years into that, I come back home. And he's actually the one, he's from Montana. My dad's from Montana, my mom is family, Mokai, lived in Moku. And Kalihi, his father, her dad was a Mashao. And so we jumped between families. You know, watching education, all our money went to education, so we're living with my grandma and we're renting, or you know, we're living with multiple families in the home to be able to put the kids through school. And my aunties were doing the same thing, my sister same thing. Everybody had the opportunity in education to be able to walk down this road. But spending all of that time, I get to a place where I come back home, and actually the Scandinavian German man telling me, "You like your culture, you should go take that in school," because now I don't know what I was going to do when I came back, what I was going to study. And so I ended up taking Hawaiian language right when I came back, and it stuck. That was the one thing resonated really quickly, the language resonated. Started taking Hawaiian studies courses, all that information resonated, loved the stories. And my memory at that moment, my young Kalehua had a good memory. Old Kalehua does not have a good memory. But young Kalehua could retain information that I felt was valuable and synthesize those things. And it got me to a point where it was my turn to start my family. Understanding that I got to sit with guys like Noel Warner and all the Manoa-centric Hawaiian language guys. So Noel Warner, Lionel Wong, Kekeha Solis, and Calvin Smith, and those folks. But hear about the native-speaking population, because this is my entry point into advocacy. Because I believe my first stage of advocacy was I decided to raise my homeschool my children and raise them in Aloha. And so they didn't know English. And it was kind of a leap of faith for me at that moment in time. And luckily their mother kind of went along with it. She had to learn the language along the way. But just hearing the stories from that group of people, walking through a process to become an immersion Kaipuni teacher, and then I have Elizabeth Kauahi Paula was our resident native speaker at the school. And she was in the classroom that I was in. I was like, holy cow, so I got to spend time with her just serendipitously without understanding how impactful her stories were going to be to me. And so again, in her sharing of story, that's what my ears wanted to hear. My ears just wanted to hear more about who we were and just the lifestyle. And then being able to do my teacher training at āina, I got to meet Lanakila and all the Hotel Project, and opening up Ka'ala Farms, and opening up Kanewai at UH Manoa, and all of the characters that come into that space. The stories really drove a new sense of understanding that the way I saw the world was not the only way to see it. And that was a really big realization that I had to make. And so in that realization, I also watched the demise. Tutukoi Paula passed away when I was still teaching at Waiau. And so feeling this loss, because I never really felt, my grandparents passed away, but I never watched information pass away. You know, like how I could conceive of it. And so watching the information pass away, it sparked this almost fear, trepidation, and what does the future hold for us? And not just now at that moment, having a daughter, thinking like, holy cow, what can be left for? I got to meet her. I got to spend time with Anakala Eri. But Anakala Eri is just holding her like this. You know, she's in diapers to it. And even though spiritually that was really impactful too, I knew that his words would not fall on her ears, you know, in the same way that they did on mine. And so the lessons that I got to extract from the story that they were telling were of a different worldview. They were of seeing the world in a different way, and in a way that actually created the Hawaii that we carry as Hawaii, not the Hawaii we see with our eyes now. And so all of those stories, and you know, being a Hawaiian language major at the time, and I love reading, so I just, you know, we used to have to do microfilm, so that was frustrating. But reading Hawaiian language in that way, you make a lot of errors in picking up the microfilm. So you think that it's mislabeled. You got to go through the whole process, put them all in, and you read it, and you can't find them. You're like, damn it! But you read all that. You know, you thought you made a mistake because you're looking for something else, but you actually just read all of that. And so I pull it off and you make another mistake. And every mistake, compounding upon itself, becomes more and more and more words, more and more and more worldview, Wanaike. And so beginning that process, watching, feeling Tutukoi Paula pass away, hearing the stories of all of the kupuna that I never got to meet in the Lumi Manaleo at UH Manoa, all of the things, all of the native speaker tapes, and understanding that the majority of us cannot access that. And those people put in a lot of effort, a lot of energy to save that for us. That I knew when they left, also studying, just the political realm of language revitalization, that you need a native speaking core to actually have a living, vibrant language. And so in that realization, starting to raise my daughter in that way, and to build a Hawaiian language environment, and take a leap of faith to run that social experiment that I'm not going to teach my children English until so homeschooling until 8, and their English really wasn't that strong. But trying to focus on, not harming other people's children, but using the words that I had in my bank at that time, that we were good enough. Our language was good enough, our stories are good enough. It made me change, it made me a new person. And so I wanted my children to feel that. And in essence, walking through that path, we had three kids along the way, and I got to, when they were 8 years old, put them into immersion, and I was already a teacher, got a job as a teacher trainer at the University of Hawaii Manoa in the College of Education, and just watching the trajectory of everything that was going on, and seeing our kids, Aloha Hawaii kids, being treated like stepchildren in the system, not given the opportunities in the same way, whether it be sports or just the different offerings that schools can give in resource courses and classes. It was all the state just saying, be thankful that you even exist in that way. And it wasn't enough, and for me it was more about to be able to advocate for that. I was seeing my children progress in language, but I wasn't seeing those results in the schools, and I felt it selfish that I would just stay in my home and do it for myself. But I thought this is that all children need the opportunity to have that, have the language shape their thinking, because when it shapes their thinking and it reshapes their worldview, then reality changes, because their actions and the decisions that they make in life change. And so being able to walk through that path, just a real heavy advocate for the Kaipuni program, took a position in the Department of Education after UH Manoa, just trying to establish more strength in the systemic structure to allow for more resources to trickle down to the students. And I don't like that work. I'm going to tell you, I don't like paperwork. I hate paperwork. But to be able, if the children are the target, you got to do the paperwork. Because if you don't, nobody will. And that's the truth, is that there are multiple times in my life that, and this is the theme that will get me to Maunakea with these guys, is that if you don't do them, nobody going. If you don't do them, nobody going. So go do it. Teach your children Aloha Hawaii. Advocate. Go to university. Share worldview with new teachers. Go to the department when no one else wants that job. Lead the immersion program. Get. It's always this. If nobody is going to do it, then I feel like we all should. But that's just the drive in me, is that if I don't do it, nobody will. And many times that was actually true. And so getting to this point, I wasn't involved in 2015, but what Lanakila did move me enough that, again, as my first daughter was born, I got asked to be a part of a 5-member cohort of Kione Lunas to learn traditional tattooing. So I was thinking about what can I offer? Not knowing what's coming in the future, but just understanding what they did, what they stood for, and they did when no one else would. And so recognizing that, I went up and just wanted to meet these folks and offer tattooing, offer kakao to them. That's when I actually got to meet and get to know the stories of these guys and meet Kaho'okahi because Kahoka, I already knew these guys at Kalehua, and Kalehua was at the university, so I had opportunities to learn from him, talk to him a lot, and experiences that we were thinking. But getting to meet those folks and offer kakao in that space at the visitor center and freeze my butt off sleeping up there at night. There's the things that is, you know, I only spent like a week there, but there wasn't, they were there for months, you know, and just getting a better appreciation for what they were doing for all of us as a collective. And the collective is really important to me. And so because of that, meeting Aukake and spending more time in the Aloha Hawaii realm with him as well, when it came to the time this last time to set up the Pūlama, I could only give a couple of weeks, but you know, when he called and said, okay, we need some key guys to show up and help set this up. Not knowing that we were going to come through, but gonna go. And he called and I went. That's what got me there. But that's the story to Maunakea, and you know, the radio story is still playing out. Wākea is still playing out, but ceremony is at the core of everything that we're doing right now. Simply because ceremony is where our worldview is embedded, and we have to reshape access to those spaces where people can actually feel what our kupuna felt. Because once they feel that, they'll come on and go back.
You know what's really striking about, like, when you guys are talking, it's about how attentive you are to the people around you. And Andre talking about the little girl with the water, and Lanakila talking about the auntie jumping in front of the bus, and Kalehua talking about Manakala Eddie and watching, you know, thinking about the lessons from the kupuna. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how you bring the struggle from Maunakea into the work that you're doing, like right now, like at Lahaina, or on Maui, or at Red Hill, or sort of like how are the lessons from Maunakea helping to shape the kind of action you take, like right now?
I would say that Maunakea was a platform for us to engage a lot of the traditions and the practices or ideas that we've been learning about. We were able to move on those things, right? You know, there's a bit of a gap of, I would say, a time of activation of our lahui from the time of Koho'olawe and the heavy activism times of the 70s and 80s. There's kind of a bit of a gap, you know.
Oh, Candace.
No need. Okay. Sorry.
So I could for me, like from, you know, being born in '86 and then just come from the '90s and stuff, you know, I don't recall seeing big movements in my childhood time. So I didn't see that. I remember starting to see the books of them. I saw the pictures of them, and hearing the stories and watching the old videos, but there wasn't an action in my childhood. They were good gains like the charter school movements, but they weren't these direct actions. And we heard about the Pele defense. We heard about these things, and I remember when it got to that point of seeing Maunakea, like the bulldozers coming. I remember for a time looking around like, where are those guys that do that? And realizing, where are they? And then realized, damn it! At one point I realized, like, well, this Kano, I know they were heavy. Like, you are the leaders of tomorrow. You are the leaders. You know, it's like, oh, I guess that means let's go. So it was for me, it was seeing that was where we brought ourselves all this training that we were receiving, all these mo'olelos and stuff to put into action. In Maunakea 2015, we never had AHA. The AHA that was set in 2019 kind of helped to really set spiritual foundation, but we didn't have the kupuna. It was actually interesting as I'm learning more of the Ho'olawe story, where wow, it's actually very similar. Ho'olawe, you know, The first round was all the young people, and they never really have the big support and everybody till some years later. Yeah? Same thing Maunakea. First round, we had some, but we never have a lot of them. I remember was one question from Michael. So I was like, crap, what did they stay? But it was interesting how up there, one thing that we did end up establishing was that the keys. The key of Wākea Mauna led us, was one of the first things that we did. That was from, I talked about when we had set that first Kū ceremony, Pūlama, that key came with me. And then the building of the hale. When the hale came, that kind of gave us like a focal point. And it became the hale of Wākea Mauna, and that's where it was actually, I just remember me, Kahi, Lakia Trask, Wipo Freire, some of us talking story, and Mehana were like, you know what, we wake up in the morning, what are we doing? Most of us young bucks, and we're like, you know what, let's set our point. So we established, because we were blessed to be raised, whether it was a charter school or Hawaiian immersion or in Halau or something, that we're in this place, we should have a protocol. And so we engage things that we do. So we established for ourselves morning prayer. Someone had to go get Kū out of the hale. We stood, we did our morning pule. Kū was set back into the hale, and then whatever happened that day happened that day. The sunset, we did. There's something to set ourselves, give us a ceremonial and a spiritual grounding while we're up there. So I thought like Maunakea was like, especially for a lot of us who got involved, who are products of the Hawaiian education movement, like being able to actually apply all these teachings. Yeah? And so, for me, even when we came down off the Mauna in 2019, really we moved from that into COVID. Yeah, and the Mauna gave us quite a platform, or not a guidance perhaps for many of us. The call for return to āina. I never saw the garden sections of every store wiped out like that before. Everybody was going back to āina. Everybody was re-engaging. Everyone, even like I did, and even others sparked, used the tool of social media for pule. We maintained aha, we maintained the pule mauriolas and stuff. So it's just bringing these traditions and our culture and just bringing it, it's living. It's the living thing, and we apply it. And really, the mobilizations that we saw take place on the Mauna, and the pulling together, that Kūkulu Lecture, that pulling together of many for this to achieve that, we're seeing it. We saw it when the Kahuku windmill battle was taking place. So we started to see that mobilization, and that effort to, even though it may not have been successful in the end result, you saw that community getting activated, and not every battle we're going to win, but the exercises are there. We're starting to Kūkulu again. We're relearning what it is to be in a community of people. We're talking over 100 years of Western colonization that ripped us apart. We can't expect it to mend overnight. Yeah, as I think I must commend our people, though, that in a couple of generations, we've done quite a bit, so I think that's the template I see. The Mauna is just helping. Was the flashpoint of this generation. I think every one of us had a flashpoint that helped to activate Maunakea for this Makua generation. That's giving us now the template of how we know that when we go back home, we cannot just go back home to the regular everyday. That we always have to come back and we bring that. One big thing was kapu aloha doesn't only have to exist on the mountain. And in fact, it definitely shouldn't only exist on the mountain, because if we cannot hold kapu aloha in our own homes, what are we doing on the mountain? You tell me I'm able to execute kapu aloha stronger for one police officer ready to arrest us or whatever than I can with my own siblings or my own ohana. So it amplified these conversations in our communities. So I think, but like all good things, it's going to take repetition and more things to engage us and prepare us. But we're seeing the uplift. COVID really brought us back to a level ground, which I kind of, when I sit back and I kind of makabalu our aha and everything, I was like, When you stand at the base of one of the most powerful scepters of the planet and you call for great for the system to come down and all this hulihia. How you think the planet is going to respond? It gave us an opportunity where everybody went home. That was a blink, the closest blink we've had for a long time to what it was to live as like our kupuna did. Where we weren't jumping in our cars and driving 50 miles every single day. We stayed in our places, looking at kiloing this sky, this place, and you know, actually talking to the people around you. Yeah, that's how we built our Hawaiian culture and community. So there was a lot of interesting blessings that we could find from that vow. Of course, it's the hardships as well, but you know, yeah. So I see what we saw in the Mauna, kind of the kahea was take it home, bring this organization. What we see activating right now for Alele Olena or Lahaina, a lot of you're seeing the same templates, you know, because we saw how we moved for the Mauna, we saw how we organized the resources, and you see a lot of the same people helping to Aukake these things, and or coming in and knowing one thing too, we don't overstep our place. You know, we respect, we wait for the kahea for those on the ground and those community leaders too. So we feeling that, we knowing that, we're learning how to integrate, how to kako and be supports. So, you know, lifting so much pule for our ohana there, but at the same time, as long as that community, because we all know the direct, to move right now to help the direct support for ohana, making sure that the people themselves are safe, housed, clothed, fed. That's one thing, but we already hear the other rumbles happening around us. And you know, this is very delicate. This is where sometimes it's like, this is not the Mauna. We're not going to come in kue right now because we have uhane that need tending. We have so it's a different thing. So we have to step lightly at the same time still kiai. How do we do that? So that's where we're listening and communing with the ohana on the ground there. And you know, again, to like some people are like, see you back in the Mauna. I'm like, I hope not. If we gotta go back to the Mauna, oh my God, then we're not doing a good job here. So the goal is again to the big battles shouldn't have to get to the roads. It takes that we don't just go back home and turn it off. It's engaging in these systems and participating and following, engaging, running, you know, whatever we got to do in these systems before. We've had a lot of exercise in the defense. We need to start getting to that point that we're also becoming the narrators and therefore initiating the offense. And I said the best way to beat a lot of things we're facing is that we just got to take charge and activate these wonderful, powerful visions that we know are more important for our communities. So, yeah, I think that's where I see for us that the Mauna is impacting right now.
I don't think people realize that that you do a lot of farming work, you know, from your Wākea experience and how you were, I saw you at Niuli'i, yeah. Yeah, and then I learned the best lesson from you about you're saying that when you direct the water into the āwai with the manowai, you keep it palu so that the water can flow through, yeah? So that it can, if the water current is super strong, then you let the water come down the river, bust the wall, so that you don't flood your lo'i. And I was just so, that was like, you know, you're teaching people all the time. And that was our land stewardship class with Kikuhi. And then we were watching you and I was like, dude, like, you're like all over, you know, like, and all of you have, you know, are rooted in farming, you know, in some kind of way. And I think that's very cool.
Yeah, I just want to farm. But it is, you know, that's where that makawalu, that idea of our kupuna is really so that we see the amplification of how we govern ourselves, how we set up our communities. It starts right there. Because if you can't get it right on how you gather from the āina itself, well then we're messing up already. So that's where it is our pilina to āina. We have a tendency to think about this human over here and then āina. That's not Hawaii. Hawaii is anything is āina, and we know that we're just part of it. Yeah, and that is stability, that's longevity.
And the loving way that every day you spend 15 to 20 minutes resetting the wall. In the morning, you were telling us in the morning you would reset the wall, and then but you keep it loose so that the water can flow through and not there'd be like a barrier. Anyway, super cool.
So how we're connecting Mauna experiences?
To what you're doing now with your
Yeah.
carving and with helping Moku on Maui.
Yeah, well, there's lots to think about on that one. I guess the first thought for me when I see issues, through my experience, Kaho'olawe, was a short story. I met this kupuna and got to spend got to spend some time with him, but we spent time on Kaho'olawe. And he was kind of a native plant expert. His name was Rennie Silva. And he had done some of the first plantings restoration work on Kaho'olawe. And there's a story about that where, you know, when you think about Kaho'olawe, an island that's 7 by 11 miles, you know, 36,000 acres or something, it's kind of daunting, you know, like how do we go about restoring an island, an entire island? Who's done it before? Who has experience? And so that question was kind of posed to this kupuna, Randy Silva, and he said to me, he answered in the best way that he could. He said, well, better we try something, because we already know what happens when we try nothing. And that, you know, Kaho'olawe people, they know this story. But for me, that was important, yeah. Anything is better than nothing. So that's kind of been sort of a little bit of a motivator for me. Like when I look around and I see, like Lanakila was saying, oh, who's coming? Where's the vanguard? Where's the support? And you know, I just like, hey, we gotta do. Well, better we try now. Because if you don't do nothing, nothing would happen. He used to also say the results of nothing is nothing. So you know, that's been a factor. And so for Maunakea, you know, when they announced the construction date, I was kind of like Lanakila for 2019. I was waiting for the kahea, the tipua or ke aloha or, you know, kaho'okahi, like, and we kind of never hear nothing, like what's going on. So then I started calling kaho'okahi, and he never answered. He's hard to get a hold of. So I called his dad and I said, tell your freaking son for and he called me and I said, bro, you seen the construction date? What's going to happen? What are we going to do? And we're like, we don't know, but we'll start planning. So we started calling around. And this is something that I learned from Auntie Terry Keko'olani as a basic organizing principle. You have to call people. She would tell me, Andre, you can't just put out a flyer and think people would show up. You have to call people. You have to secure commitments. And one of the ways you secure commitments, and you ask them how much people you bring in with you. And this is something now that I've kind of taken this little experience and put it into our organizing curriculum. One of the ways you want to call people who have people. Yeah, it's a quick way to bring people together. Call people who have people. 2, you got to get commitments from them, not that kind of social media. On the phone, we need you. Can you come? Yeah, I can come. Okay, how much people are you bringing? Because we need a head count for the food. That's just a tactic, right? Yeah. Head count for the food. Yeah, I need a clear number because we don't like waste money. You know? Hawaiians, we don't waste food, yeah? So you talk about head count for the food. You can get one head count for the food. So that's how we call Kalehua. So call me. How much guys you bringing? I'm bringing 10 guys, bro. Right on. So you know, these are like little organizing tips, and I learned this from Auntie Terry. But you know, for Maunakea, like, you know, we kind of were waiting, and then somebody designated me to make a couple of calls. So I called Auntie Pua Case, and I called the Kanaka Rangers, and you know, kind of got the ball rolling a little bit by pulling people together with a meeting. And so, you know, we ended up calling like, geez, probably initially about 16 or 18 people who had people. And we had a meeting at Kaho'okai's house in Kona, and I flew up for that, and where we started to talk about what we're going to do. What we're going to do when the machines start rolling up the Mauna. And from there, we began organizing, and you know. But you know, lessons learned for the thing. One of the things for me was a lot of people don't know this, but well, a lot of people do know this, but a lot of people might not make the connection or think about this. Lanakila's role in the 2019 Maunakea movement largely was to go out to the outer islands to teach the aha. And that was a huge organizing activation strategy, yeah. When people learned the aha in Waianae, or when they learned the aha in Maui, or Kauai, or wherever, even on the West Coast.
145 workshops in 3 months.
Yeah, imagine that. You talk about mobilizing people, that was powerful. And then a lot of those people were compelled to come to the Mauna. So that's one thing that I think about, like how we're pulling people in through participation in ceremony. And so there's, this connection is something that I'm writing down into an organizing training curriculum. But that was one of them. Maunakila going out and doing this outreach. He was almost like the kind one recruiter. Aloha āina recruiter, And I think that also that but all those people who came to the Mauna, one of the powerful things for me that I've seen and witnessed, and really part of my own experience and journey, is the demystifying of activism. There was a time when, when I was when we used to go Kekuni's house, was like activism was a kind of not a popular word, and we were very small, especially sovereignty independence, very small, marginalized group. And oftentimes there was judgment even from within our own community. These guys rabble-rousers, troublemakers, or they just make noise, whatever. But I feel like through the Mauna, we've kind of demystified, in a sense, activism. And particularly the most important part of activism, which is frontline direct action engagement, whether it be with police or with government agencies, whatever. Because, and I'll tell you why, I feel that the Mauna was critical in demystifying that. One, when we were up there, we were doing a lot of nonviolent direct action training. And there's terminology that we use. Some of them is action logic. Some of it is, we're always concerned about optics. And so when we're up at the Pu'uhonua, the kupuna were talking about optics, action logic. And I'm like, oh, wow. You're getting the vocabulary. That's an indicator. But the most important thing that I've seen, and this is from 2015, yeah, all the way forward, is it's about narrative. And the first, to me, the most important part of the narrative was in 2015 that we're not protesters, we're protectors. And then what do we do with protectors? Translated them into Olelo Hawaii, Kiai. And then all of a sudden, people became Kiai. They started identifying as Kiai. Kiai Vai, Kiai āina, Kiai Mauna. And so, or just Kiai. And then all of a sudden, the t-shirts and the hats and the branding came, which is brilliant. So now, 2019, we had a cadre of Kiai already, ready to rock and roll. Post 2019, Kiai is like MMA. And Kiai in Hawaii is like, we don't have to say, we don't have to use the kind of Namu Haole activists. Although I don't have a problem with that, because Kawai Puna appreciating is to say, activism, the etymology of the word, is active. You're doing something. Right. Yeah, you're not complacent. You're active. You're leo. So, but anyways, bringing it into Kiai, like I feel like you see, I drive every day. I see Kiai stickers on all the vehicles here, and it makes me feel good because I know we're not alone now. Get plenty of us, and when the Kaya comes, we're gonna be there. So these are kind of just some of the concepts that I feel cause some transformative change in our community around activism and social justice, and so building off of that, I talked about narrative. Well, one of the things that I saw that was one of the most important, powerful things that happened kind of organically on the Mauna was the creation of our Mauna media team. Because we were able to control our narrative, and we had some experts out there. I remember Na'alehu Anthony showed up like within the second or third day, and he said something really powerful. He pulled us together, about 5 of us. He said, look, this is what you gotta do. We're up here remote. We can't expect media to come to us. You gotta give them, you gotta feed them. And when you feed the media, you control the content, right? Create a Dropbox. Put your press conference or your press release info in your Dropbox. All your best photographs that you want, put them in the Dropbox, and all your video clips in the Dropbox. And you share that with the media. They will pick it up. And they did. They ate it up for 8 months. So we're able to, in a way, control our narrative. But we had professional Hawaiian videographers, Kanakas, social media managers, people just who are basic organizational comms, communications. We had a solid team, and even many of my friends from Standing Rock and an Indian collective always tell me, you guys' media was some of the most tight, best media that was coming out. And we organized a single focal point, right, coming out, Pu'uhonua or Pu'uhulu Facebook page, Instagram, website. So all the information was kind of like, there was a lot of info coming out, but you could know that there was a primary venue for info, for narrative. And so we started to control our narrative on the Mauna by having a tight media team and sort of media tactics. One of the things we did was every day at 11, in the first few weeks, every day at 11 a.m. we had a press conference. Remember on the Aloha Kupuna, every day we did an update. And that consistency kind of pulled the media. They knew, they just would show up. 11 o'clock, they were there, cameras rolling. Whether Hawaii News Now or KHON, whatever. So those are some of the things that I see that was important and powerful from Maunakea, in addition to the most powerful thing, which was the aha ceremony. But these things complemented how we control our narrative and how we controlled, a portion of our power by the information that was coming out. I remember when the governor declared emergency proclamation. I told Kaukai, hey, we'll declare on National Hawaiian Emergency. Hawaiian. And we did. And we put out a message. We were declaring a National Hawaiian Emergency. We need people on the Mauna. And people came. So those kinds of things. I think one of the things that I see also is not everybody works together. There was a lot of little bit tension here and there where some guys didn't like who was in charge or what decisions were being made. Some people, and the reality is you cannot please everybody and you cannot work with everybody. There's different personalities. Work with the people that you can work with, but always work with the grassroots kuaina from that place. So we were working, at least us huli, we're working closely with Antipua, Antinoinoi, most of the kupuna that were in the kupuna tent, Lanakila, we tried our best. We tried our best to not just parachute into the Mauna and all of a sudden, we're in charge. We were never in charge. We were providing resources, and the kupuna were in charge. The kupuna were making decisions. And we always look back to the kupuna. And it was mentioned by Lanakila. So actually a lesson learned from PKO. It's taught in college. One of the things that made the PKO strong was when they brought the kupuna in. Emma DeFries, who's Camille's, grand aunt, something like that. Sam Lono, Antipua, Kanahele, the kupuna from Molokai. Yeah, I mean, when they came in, that's what strengthened the Protect Kaho'olawe movement, because they had the elders with them as the wisdom, as the optics, and the fortitude that the elders provided to the younger generation. So when the kupuna came up on the Mauna, I think, if I remember correctly, my memory was Auntie Maxine who said, we don't like you young guys get arrested. You get your whole life ahead of you, we will get arrested. And I remember when the morning of the lockdown on the cattle guard, it was 4 o'clock in the morning, we were out there and I seen something happening down the road. And I was like, what's going on? And then someone said, the kupuna set up a blockade. So for me as an organizer, particularly a nonviolent direct action, I was like, wait, what? The freaking kupuna is blocking our blockade. So I gotta go figure out what's going on. So I went down there. I was a little miffed, like, why are they doing this? Like, because I'm all about like organized strategy, But when I went down there, and I was down there for like 1 minute, and I realized, holy moly, something more powerful is happening. Yeah. When they started chanting, "We shall not be moved." See all the kupuna in the chairs with their blankets, and I was like, oh, talk about optics. Wow, that's power. So I immediately broke out my phone and I started talking and interviewing kupuna, and I was like, this is going to be the power right here. And then the sun came up, the kupuna never moved, got hot, so these pop-up tents went up. Yeah. And then that was 2, 4, I had 8 pop-up tents. So then I thought, I would run down Hilo, pop one 20 by 40 easy corner tent. We put them right across the road. And And then that was the beginning of the Kupuna blockade, which became really the most powerful thing for the Maunakea movement, that we were led by our Kupuna, and we were, I use this word, guided, managed. No, plenty of guys never act up because that Kupuna making decisions. If never have the Kupuna tent, I think we'd be jam up. Because nobody will listen to me, you know. So, you know, that was great. So narrative, having a tight control of your media, having media skills, having your elders involved to guide you and to support you, very powerful.
We actually have one of the kupuna here, so I was wondering if maybe Sparky can talk a little bit about being the kupuna on the front line. If you want to add to what they're saying.
And it's really hard to add to that. I can only talk about my experience in being called to go up, because I didn't have the connection. I didn't understand all of the stuff that was going on, other than the mama said, I gotta go, and I gotta go. So I got all my personal things handled, DNR, do not resuscitate, and all of the end of life type thing, the will, the thing, because I didn't expect to come back alive. I expected the police and authorities
to overreact because they were so pissed off that Hawaiians had the gall to say, we're not moving, we're not going to. And what I really appreciated, well, the other part was that Kapua Aloha for me had no meaning until I went there. So before I went, it was a soundbite, very creative. When I went up there, and a demonstration on the day when the cops showed up was a demonstration of Kapua Aloha. And then there was a meaning, a very deep meaning applied to very simple words. And what I really appreciate about the organization, and this was, you know, it's obvious that a lot of the stuff was very accidental and not necessarily planned, although you look back, it looks like it was very well organized and planned, but it was the āina just guiding us.
Organic.
But the organic movement of the Mauna, we're listening, we're paying attention, and we're responding to the āina giving us direction. The other part that I really appreciated was there was a place for the kupuna to go, for them to land and be cared for in a way that we were not prepared. But at one point at the kupuna meetings, and even, do we go ahead and stay on the road and blockade, or do we move to the side? Most of the kupuna said, let's blockade, we want to go. But the decision was, okay, let's go ahead and move to the side, and let's work this out. And that, I thought, was good. During the arrest, which was, I started off on the first row, then more kupuna with more mana than I moved to the second row, and then they kept coming, and I moved to the third row, and then they kept coming, and I moved to the fourth row. And the arrest happened, started going. Come around 4 o'clock, they said, okay, we Paul. I said, bro, we're on the fourth row, we're waiting. So Gwen Kim was on our row. I mean, there was like 8 of us waiting for the arrest. That never happened for our row, but it did happen. And the kupuna that went, I have nothing but aloha to stand up. And this is one of the biggest fears I think we all have. How do we stand up against authority that we've been raised to trust, honor, and respect? And we would trust them to do the right thing, but over generations, they lie. And not because they want to lie, it's just that their job, they follow an instruction. Their boss said, so I just following orders. But some of the cops that was there that day, they wanted to bust heads. They were ready. They had their big bottle of bear spray and their tasers and their ninja gloves, and they came prepared. Their only problem was that they were trained to respond to violence. And the Kapua Aloha disarmed them. They didn't know what the hell to do. So they just stood there, waiting for somebody to hit them. But the kupuna said, when they come, just move to the side and sit down, be quiet. And when that parting of the ways happened, the energy changed. And then when I learned about the kapolo, the ladies are up front, the cops are coming in, and some of the guys are saying, "E ku mau mau," so you could feel the energy coming out. And then the ladies started saying, "E aloha, eh," and the energy went poof. They moved to the side, and the cops are standing there waiting, and nothing happened. Or actually, a lot happened, but nothing that they wanted to happen. So the movement, what happened, listening to the Mauna and the leadership, allowing the kupuna to have a place. I think in every movement, if the kupuna have a place, it allows the younger guys to go ahead and do what's got to be done. And they can always stand behind the kupuna and say, "Well, the kupuna said." So I really appreciate you guys, so thank you. Oh, I have one more thing. My great-great-grandmother is Uncle Ted Kaikuihivich from Waipio. They had their house down there, and he showed me where my great-grandmother was buried. So this is before the Ku'e petitions were brought to Hawaii. So after I seen her where she was buried and Uncle Ted's mom and the family plot, sort of, then my wife and I was at Makua, and we were battling the government about a long-term solution to homelessness. Found out that the military was involved, and the Ku'e petitions was presented to us when we were at Makua, and I found my great-great-grandmother's signature and all her siblings that had signed. So during that time, what's my kuleana? So the battle with the military that really has taken off came out of that question about what's the kuleana. And the efforts at Makua is part of that expression of resistance. It's not, what's happening isn't right, and got to do something. Not knowing what to do, but doing something. And the āina would end up guiding, and that's what has happened with the Mauna for me. The guidance, the observation, and the lessons that you guys all help us learn has made a difference for us. And eventually the military will leave, the āina will be returned, and there's a whole bunch of kuleana that goes along with that. How do we do it? So thank you so much.
Because I think what Maunakea did for me was to strengthen my resolve. Because I never had to, aloha, but you don't really gotta sit. You don't have to sleep in your car. And I mean, I still get one toe and I get all this feeling left because I'm sleeping in boots. But it just strengthens your resolve because you're not always in a space like that, I mean, especially in education, because I'm an educator. Education usually doesn't get to that point. And so I learned in that time something that goes beyond what my profession or my life's purpose has already helped me to experience. Because many of the educational battles are legal battles, they're discussionary battles, they're educational battles. You're talking with people who just don't know any better about things. And Maunakea was different. And so having that experience and bringing it back into that space, it gives you more resolve to go through the treachery of the front line. Because I'll still see it that being a principal right now is the hardest job I've ever done, but 100% the most rewarding. Because that's the, to reshape reality, you have to proactively go at it. And it's not something you can just visit one day. like you gotta commit a long period of time to help those children in that time of development, where their worldview and the perspectives are being shaped, because that's what's gonna carry into the future, and it's gonna be a part of a time frame that they're not gonna remember. You know, what you're talking about, how we've been indoctrinated to believe certain things, it's so deep in us because it's from a time that we cannot access. Our brains are still growing, our spirits are still naive, you know, in that time frame. And when you emerge out of that, you already have the majority of the ideas that you're gonna use to make your decision and judge people and analyze the world and engage in those spaces. And so the battleground is actually before that. And for me, that's because I understand that when you can supplant, as we were supplanted, so we had perspectives supplanted in that developmental stage with the boarding schools and just education in general, that looked like a bunch of row of pews and had a preacher. That's education. It's indoctrination. And when you walk through a process like that, historically, and the whole generation gets that mantra, gets that programming at the same time, you see a really, really quick shift in worldviews. And it's detrimental not just for humans, but for the natural ecology. Because now we don't have the tools to be able to uphold what our people have spent thousands of years building for us, and the gift that they left for us, which was our world. And so, as a principle, that's all I can focus on. And the strength that comes from all of these points of contention help me to focus on just rebuilding reality. One people, one document at a time, one child at a time, one hug at a time, one teacher at a time, because it's still hard because everybody's indoctrinated. Teachers are indoctrinated, parents are indoctrinated. If you catch the kids too late, they're indoctrinated already. And there's all these discrepancies of worldview that we think we've been given this choice to be Hawaiian or not, or to enact Hawaiian behaviors or not. And realistically, we still don't have a choice. We still don't have a legitimate choice, and that's the front line. Because we need to know Hawaiian language as well as we know English. We need to know our stories at the same quantity and proficiency that we know the rest of the world. Because that's choice. And once we get there, I can almost guarantee our people are not going to choose this side. They're going to choose us every time. And it shows up even in the old newspapers. It shows up in Native American recollection of the time of the atrocities that happened to them. That even those white settlers who were kidnapped by the Indians, they don't like go home. They like stay with the Indians. Because the way that we live is better than how we live now. And that's got to be said. And so we take those types of the ideological beliefs into the struggle that even now with Aukake and Red Hill, I can, I'm not trying to convert nobody, I'm not saying nothing, but the spiritual element is real. And only because there are always there's a consistency in how this information shows up that just reaffirms over and over and over this idea of ceremony being the core. Because I can share that we set up, and not too many people showed up, but we tried our best to. We stayed at the front gate of Pearl Harbor headquarters, and we stayed there for Anahu 10 days. And just out of the blue, we were talking, and like, I was like, wow, get on Anahu, it's a Hawaiian time frame. And sometimes they run ceremony like that. Not realizing that when we break camp, and 2 weeks later, a Hawaiian language student just sends me this newspaper article. And I just was like, holy hell. Because the article basically said that the way to apologize, mihi, to Kane Kavaiola, that's a traditional form of Kane, Kane of the living waters. That the way to mihi to Kavaiola is to sit in prayer for 10 days. And I came out of and that ultimately, without knowing it, we did the right thing. And that's the same thing I think I'm hearing up here. Is that over and over and over again, we get reaffirmation. And that's from the newspaper, that's hundreds of years ago. That ultimately, the kupuna had to write that to gain this affirmation. And the kupuna had to know about it, so their kupuna had to do it. Like that, this is generations of direct action, whether in ceremony, whether in writing, whether in reading and researching, and now reaffirming what we've done. It takes generations of action just to get to the point that we got to, and to get that reaffirmation. And all of that stems as that this is just a continuum of us being us, that's just what we do. And by participating in that, that's the fulfillment of our purpose.
I don't know if people in the audience have questions that you want to ask. Such a rare opportunity to have all these guys together in one place.
I know you folks already spoke to what you folks are doing and still doing, but are you folks mentoring people? I mean, you know, Kalehua, you just spoke to the one, the kumu, the haumana, you know, speaking to different people, but you folks have projects, you have activities, so you're still moving forward. You're still bringing people together. You're still holomua mode, right? But do you have mentors? I mean, not mentors, but do you have proteges or people that you're mentoring before you get to the pupuna mode, so that they'll have years underneath them, you know, with you? And, you know, it may be 10 that you're trying to bring along, and because as time goes on, life changes, and sometimes we don't have that full commitment that we once gave or that we once expected because of life's changes. So are you folks actively either looking for proteges, or do you have any?
As a kumu, I kind of cast in a net. It's like me too. We'll see who rises, who sticks around, who like follow me all over the place, or not. But you know, I think at this point for me in my life, it's just that's why I just go out and I'm always open to share and teach. And you know, I have in my halau, I have a number of people who've been with, kind of following along with me since before the Mauna too. So not necessarily that I'm pushing them in that, but just, you know, seeing as they're learning along with me as well. I'm still very young and a lot to learn. So that too, just opening doors for those who don't, to know that it's okay to jump on and learn.
I spent a lot of time with Kaho'okahi and brought him on a lot of trips, you know, where we learn nonviolent direct action. He's fully capable of teaching nonviolent direct action. And our org, Huli, that's kind of the purpose of Huli, was to be a training org. So we teach nonviolent direct action. We had our first nonviolent direct action camp last year here at Kalehua. And we were planning to have another one in October, but because of the Maui wildfire, we've postponed it till next year. But our goal is to provide training in nonviolent direct action. We're developing what we call action media. You know, how to use kind of the stuff like Oren does, you know, but how to do it all from your phone. Yeah, and so we got action media training curriculum that we train, and we're finalizing the curriculum, but we've been training some media skills through a little collective we call Namaka Oiwi, which is just a loose media collective, teaching people how to maximize their cell phones to create and control narratives. But we also teach, we're about to start teaching organizing, because we finally came to the conclusion, it's not that hard, but if you don't know how to organize, you cannot do anything. If you don't know how to bring people together and create a vision and move towards that vision, it's difficult. So we realized that the weak link is in organizing. So our org Huli is developing a Hawaiian Kanaka organizing curriculum, and we'll start teaching organizing workshops. So that's keep an eye out. It's going to happen by next year. But you know, for me, like mentoring, I have a little team of my son and his friends. So my son is my right-hand man now, Andre Boy. But he get all his classmates from Kūkulu Lecture that he pulls in. And we roll out. We're rolling out to Maui next end of this week. You know, we're taking a couple Kūkulu Lecture graduates. So my you know, kind of busy. So I use my son. He bring his friends, and they just get organically trained with us by just doing the work, the hana.
And we kind of similar to Andre. I have 2 girls and my son. And I think they've heard me say the things that I say ad nauseum. So, I'm pretty certain they can sit here and do it better than I can right now. I also have a group of folks that I'm teaching kakao to. But in kakao, I don't subscribe to the idea that kakao is what we're doing. We're being Hawaiian through the lens of kakao. And so embedded in a lot of the training and the ceremonies and the things that we consider, just talking about design takes you into mo'olelo, and takes you into different areas, it takes you into different family genealogical lines, it takes you into places that, I would say it's training. Because I remember when I was learning, it was training to be able to, you know, and Keone had a lot of awesome friends, like Sam Ka'ai. I got to meet John Kaimikawa right before he passed away. I mean, they're just sitting in the tattooing hale that we learned, and that was on First Road Lanakila, just sitting there for 10 years and having people run through. I mean, you get on. I think that was my training ground. You know, and it wasn't indirectly someone mentoring, but I feel like I can provide the same thing for my children and the folks in those places. But ultimately, working with the teachers at the school, a lot of it is just philosophy. I mean, and I think that's the, I mean, I know that there's organizational information that everybody needs, but I still think that our people are in a philosophical stage that we don't fully understand the philosophies of our kupuna. And I'm not saying that I know all, but that's something that I think can help us get to a place. And once you understand the philosophies, you become inspired to act, because you have no other choice. The philosophies drive the way you respond. And so, yeah, that's what I think I focus on.
I think that is a good question, because I know, kind of understood that one of the most important things, one of the most important roles for an organizer, we're talking community organizing, is to develop new leadership always. Because if you're successful at you're growing your movement or your campaign or whatever you're doing, you're going to need new leadership, because as more people come, you got, you know, in humility, you have to understand you cannot do them all by yourself. So you have to develop new leadership and plan for succession.
I got a hard question for you. And with Malama Mokua, everything that we've done over the last 20 plus years, there's always been zero budget. And I know all the luas that was lined up on the side of the road.
And the warehouse tent, the one that was like Costco, the food tent, we had power, we had water, mamaki tea from time to time. What kind costs to pull something like that off within an organizational?
Well, there, you know, we just look at the Pu'uhonoa. There was multiple orgs and agencies involved in handling the cost. So there was us, Huli, and we were doing our own fundraising primarily through our relationships that came out of Standing Rock. And you know, a handful of Lakota who knew me from Standing Rock, they felt like, hey, Andre came all the way from Hawaii and he threw down for our people. So they were going to throw down for him and his people. So we, you know, a lot of our funding was coming from the states across. But between us, of course, Kalehua, who had been really at the forefront of the TMT issue. And then OHA was picking up some costs, and shoot, that might have been it. Primarily, but at one point, you know, when we were looking at the numbers, the Po'ohonua was costing about 25,000 in the first 3 months. Was costing about 25,000 a month to support with the lua, which OHA was paying for. That was the biggest cost. The lua and the kitchen tent, the big heavy-duty white canopy, OHA was paying for those through, and it wasn't like this OHA wanted to do it, because it was really through some of their staff that were boots on the ground, that were advocating, you know, primarily Davis Price. So they were picking up a big chunk of the toilets and the renting of the big kitchen tent. But there was the cost of propane, which we were using a lot for the heaters at night, drinking water, ice, and gasoline for the generators, and then food. So it was just splitting the cost between different orgs. But in our case, you know, Huli, we did, you know, our own fundraising, and we were picking up the cost of like radios, all the road safety cones and barricades and reflectors, stuff like that. But yeah, the camp was costing about 25,000 a month to run those first 3 or 4 months. And it was a lot, it was substantial, you know, and what it meant was organizing and one thing I learned from Standing Rock, from my friend who's now the president of NDN, is that one of the most important things that you have and that you can utilize and that you need to cultivate are relationships. Pilina, yeah. So I'm very conscious of that, building relationships, trying my best to maintain relationships. And so when we were up on the Mauna, I was calling all kind of people, and my friend called me and said, hey, there's this philanthropy, it's an indigenous philanthropy conference in Chicago, you need to be there. And I was like, shit, in the middle of all this police tension, I don't like leave, because at that time I was police liaison. I was interfacing a lot with Lino Kamakau. And I ended up sneaking out for 3 days, kind of with my mud on my boots, everything. Flew to Chicago, went to this indigenous philanthropy conference, and they put me on stage. I was not prepared for anything. I found one of the Maunakea videos. I think it was Jason Momoa's video of the Kupuna arrest. So I told the audio-visual guy, I found him on YouTube. I said, when I talk, play this video in the background on silent. All the Kupuna getting arrested. And I just told the story. Told the human story of what was happening. And after I got off the stage, one of the participants, one of the philanthropists stood up and said, you know, we're a philanthropy conference. This brother just came all the way from Hawaii to tell us his story. I'm committing $10,000. It's like an auctioneer. Who's matching me? And then hands started going up. You know, who can match $10,000? Isn't this what we're here for? And so we quickly raised like 50 grand, like in 20 seconds. So, you know, it was productive. So we came back, you know, with funding. But yeah, you know, it takes to do it. You know, to do anything at where you're not having to struggle and you can focus on the work. It's good to have some funding, and so we cultivate relationships around funding as well. You know, and try to. You know, it was one of my first. I'll tell you a short story. One of my first connections for funding was Uncle Walter Reading, and because he told me one time he sits on these boards, you know, different boards in Hawaii. He always makes sure that they have a fund for Hawaiian stuff, you know, Hawaiian social justice. So when I would call Uncle Walter, hey, we like go Standing Rock to build relationships. We want to learn NVDA so we can bring them back for Maunakea, you know. You got any ideas where I can find funding? He's like, I'll call you right back. He calls me back in like 10 minutes. Okay, call these 2 orgs. One going to cover your airfare. The other one going to give you one travel stipend. Boom, we went. And we went to Mauna, we went to Standing Rock. And we were really committed and focused that we went there to learn, to develop relationships, and bring that back to Hawaii. And that's what we did, because You know, my wahine Camille, now she's on the board of Indian Collective, you know, and it was through relationship building over the years. Sorry, I went into some organizing stuff, but that's what the, you know, that's what it was costing to run that camp at that time.
Well, I wanted to bring up the money because what's happening in Lahaina, when the money run out, the organizations will be gone.
Yeah.
And for them, you're talking millions, not 25,000.
Hundreds of millions, yeah.
And there's been more donations from the community, the zero budget community.
Yeah.
And even the delivery of those resources than any of the services that were brought in by government.
For sure. And that's one thing, like, I mean, I've been in contact with Kia Moku Kapu, and he's saying that he knows you gotta have a seat at the table. When this funding, all this stuff comes in. You know, on a smaller scale, I'll just share one more thing. This was sort of a strategy that we had, and I think it worked fairly well. The first time, 2015, Maunakea popped off. All kind of GoFundMes was coming up. There was no accountability, and it was difficult, you know, to who was representing the leadership in 2015. In 2019, we talked amongst ourselves, and we basically set up a funding hub to vet the legitimate primary fundraising efforts. And so, because we were in, you know, we were organizing and leading, when we ended up putting it on the website. That the vetted funding hub was primarily our Orikuli, Kahea, Hawaii Community Bail Fund, because they were just getting off the ground and needed bail money, and the Maunakea Medics and Healers Hui. Those 4 orgs, and I'm just sharing this as a strategy or a tactic that you can use. You know, when you're in a big movement, it might be worth kind of vetting your primary funding hub versus letting all these funds go crazy, and you don't know who raising money and if they even using them for the struggle. You know, so because, you know, I was there from the beginning to the end, and I came back to pack up gear. You know, I went back to Big Island to get all the huli gear, and multiple times out of a public storage, and we put them in when we bought a container. It's sitting in Hilo for the future. We have a container full of all the gear that we bought. But yeah, so the funding hub became kind of important in that it was the official kind of vetted, this is a good place to donate. You don't know where to donate, just as a tactical strategy.
So this has been like a totally amazing panel, and I really want to thank you for sharing all your strategies and your and I think it's like something that's ongoing, and I feel like you're continually keeping that fire burning for the communities, and I think that is what is so awesome about you guys. So mahalo, thank you so much.
To share real quickly too, though, because it's we didn't get to it. Like, where's Mauna now? Okay, just a real quick thing. So those of you who know, we have established the Maunakea Stewardship Authority, and that's been a couple of years from. You saw that was actually came out of legislature under Ige's administration. They gave the opening for a Maunakea working group. I myself served on that in Tinoinoi and Fujikane, a number of others, and we took about 6 or 7 months to just draft an idea of a whole new management structure for Maunakea, was the idea. And of course, seat at the table. The opportunity opened it up, so we're like, okay, well, we're not gonna let just any Tom, Dick, and Harry in there, so we better get in there. Even though we don't necessarily we didn't originally support the idea, if we don't jump in, someone else can grab the wheel. So we did, and we were like, okay, and this is never going to pass because it's like, no, give all the power out from the university, They passed it. Like, oh wow. Oh,
It's a surprise.
It was a surprise. Honestly, my only thing is that Ike knew he was out the door. He was like, fuck it, just give him a bowl right now. But, and that too then was the next stage. Okay, now they actually accepted this new authority. Now who's going to vie for these seats? So a bunch of us threw our names in. So at this time, I myself, Kalehua, Tinoinoi, Dr. Kamano Beamer, Tipomai Bertelman, very strong Kanaka representation. No, Tipo would help me. But very strong Kanaka representation in this hui. So a couple of things, just so I'm realizing the algorithm isn't out there now. But I've tried to put it out there as too, but I still hear something. So just like just a real quick thing. So the Maunakea Authority now exists, which is now going to basically be transferring and taking over the management of Maunakea from the University of Hawaii. But I'm still hearing people say, to end UH's lease extension. We did. It's done. 2028, in fact, we're cutting them short. They're out. So what's happening at this time is, in the meantime, so we're tasked with rising. It's a brand new office. And one of the some of the interesting things that we're going through is realizing the state of Hawaii has not made a new office since the 80s. So a lot of the, how do you create a new office, they're like, oh, we don't know. So we're actually having to as we're standing up a new office, which is everything all together, from creating what positions, everything in that time. We are in co-management with UH. And there's a number of things that we're already discussions. We meet every third Thursday? Every third Thursday. We post it up online too. It's all predominantly through Zoom. So I encourage everybody to maka'ala how that's rolling. In the current situation thing right now, what's interesting, just a couple of tidbits you can share with community, is the biggest kaiha that I want to put out there now is that we have to create the offices, all the different, from executive director position, all the different positions. Get ready to apply for the positions. We need our community in these positions when it goes out. Yeah, that's one thing that's moving. The other thing too that's happening right now currently is you're seeing right now we've already kind of hit the power struggle in the co-management between UH and the new authority. And it was kind of funny, I actually already told Doug, Chen, what's his name, whatever it is. Great job. Because one thing that they're talking about is like preset projects that they had currently right now. Their idea is that they're just going to continue as is until they're told otherwise. And some things are like, either told them pump your brakes, because this is not just us to pick up where you're leaving off. We were created because of your lack of oversight and stuff. So not everything is a go for it. So right now the question is, and we are having our next meeting soon on the question of being, well, who has the last say? It's like, well, you're just on your way out. So
Don't let the door hit you.
So in that right now, that's what's happening. Again, every third Thursday of the month is our monthly meetings. And again, so right now, what's the current thing? The Maunakea Authority is being established. But I will say this is my thing. I'm really trying to put out there. It is still a state office, and my biggest fear. And I don't, because it's been huki-huki, not even myself, I don't really trust it all the way, but at the same time, we're in it. The biggest thing that I've learned about governance in general, it's run by the people who show up. If we disengage, someone can easily take that ship. And so I say that's what happened to OHA. OHA was created as a solid hammer for our people. But through some mismanagement, the biggest thing is a lot of our people we've left, we're like, we don't want to deal. By I don't want to deal, it's just going to flounder instead of us maintaining control and supporting when it has to be supported and calling it out when it needs to be called out and helping and setting it straight. That's my one thing that I put out there about this authority right now, to say this is a baby organization. And right now, so some actions that we may want to take that, of course, isn't going to be nice, so we're going to need Lahui to support at times. And on the long haul, positions trade out. We need to be able to activate, to hold, to make sure that we keep good people in these pieces or in these offices. So
I'd like to take one short one on that real quick. And this is important this way, a lot of our community, a lot of our kia'i were against the Maunakea Authority, and they saw it as some kind of political maneuvering. And it wasn't. Really, the creation of the Maunakea Authority was from community leaders like Lanakila, Ahupua, and others. But for me, it was perplexing. Like, they're anti-Maunakea Authority. What's the alternative? Status quo with UH. They've already proven over decades that we cannot trust UH, that they mismanaged the Mauna. But there was this hooky over, you know, and I was like, hey, I'll take anything new. Because as Renee Silva said, more better we try something because we already know what happens when we try nothing. The results of nothing is nothing. So like, either we trust our own people, and as Lanakila laid out, Lanakila, Kalehua, Pomai Bertelman, Antinoine Wilson, Kamana Beamer, like, that's a crack team. I'd rather have them than UNH. Anything, 100%. No confusion there. And so like, we gotta really kind of get past all the fear, distrust, and judgment, even amongst our own lahui. At what point do we start trusting our community leaders, you know? Another important thing, UH is getting pushed out by the Maunakea authority. Who do you think holds the leases to the TMT? UH. So we get them out of control, we can kind of weaken the TMT. So anyways, call them.
I want to mahalo you folks for coming out, and thank you for stepping in, because I was going to say one thing that we forgot to talk about was the Maunakea authority. So mahalo to you for sharing that, because that was part of the reasons why we wanted you folks here, especially Kalehua, because I forgot that you were on. So I was like, my kai, because you know, what do we expect of them? You know, what have they done so far? What can we expect? How can we help? Because that's the biggest thing. When we start to move forward, we need to listen to the kahea and try and squeeze it into our schedules, because we all know everybody's busy, and some of us just feel that we don't have it, everything that you should have, you know, to go forward, right? But all we need is for the people to come forward with what you have, and we'll make something with that. And that's exactly what was done on the Mauna. You just come forward, and we're going to put something together, and that's what happened. So I want to thank you folks again for coming to our Maunakea Vanguards and Nakia'i segment. I just want to plug in for our next one. Actually, we're going to have 5 more nights of this, and we're going to start talking about the Waianae Kūkulu. And so we're going to start talking about what was our past, you know, from some of the kupuna, what is current today from our past and looking forward, and then what do we plan for our future. And then we're going to end on October 30th with looking at the future. You know, so we're going to have some makua, Aukake that are doing things now because they just stepped up. And then we also have some opio, some young makua that are doing things as they were raised to do. And then as others just kind of sprout out, but actually I know 3 or 4 of them that are kind of in the family, you know, so, and it doesn't always happen that way, because sometimes you have somebody that just like Kalehua was saying, you know, he just feels a little bit different, but when he says, Kamehameha schools, and everybody says, oh, okay, you're Hawaiian, but then what does that mean? You know, so then how do I become more Hawaiian? How am I going to protect what is ours to protect? Right, so that's what we're going to do. So I welcome you folks to, if you cannot come, to go ahead and tune into Oren's Facebook page or his live stream, to join us there, and encourage other people to join us, because I suck at PR. So I'm so glad that Oren and Cheryl Ann and Dee are helping Anthony Kua case. So thank you so much to everybody that helps us, especially to Oren, to putting this out there. So mahalo, Candace. Mahalo to you folks. Aloha.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah. Yes. Oh yeah. See, I got like 4%.
Yeah. So they're set up along
There's clouds and walls
here. Okay. And just in a row like this. Yeah. Okay. So I have to take one.
kind of all the behind the scenes.
It may not be, we're having a group shot.
And how all that came together, and how it's all connected, and how the Kūkulu Lecture started.
Where are you going?
When you were done,
I got 15 minutes in.
Oh, you want that one?
Yeah.
Okay.
You guys been up to all kinds of stuff.
Our āina is still impacted. The āina work is slow, the road.
Cheryl? Brian?
Good to see you again.
Yeah. No, that's all you guys talk about. Yeah, we're planning,
I just came late. Yeah, that's why.
Do you guys want to be in our photo?
Slipped into the back.
oh, let me go back, you go back.
I'm already down.
Okay.
Unless you want to
Lucy can stand up, she's fine. Come in the front, Lucy.
Your husband is saying no.
Yeah.
Kidding.
Yeah, we're just waiting for Kalehua. Yeah. Well, we'll practice while
Okay,
we're.
what happened?
In case
Oh,
it's-
no. Over here from Kūkulu, right? Oh, yeah.
I was about to say, I'll see.
I'm sorry.
You're good at it.
I got from him, this stuff.
Left side.
Wait.
Not the right, the left.
Anyhow.
Puni.
Puni?
Well, it's when I was right wing, left wing.
Which one,
That's
left
where the
wing?
fist comes from.
Left
Oh,
wing?
yeah?
Revolution.
Oh, okay.
Never say the right wing's revolutionary.
One more time.
No, you know, that was actually Kōkua, Hawaii, that was their team, left hand.
Yep. Or Black Power.
Yeah.
And it was left hand.
Where is?
But we have a photographer, so you can come inside with us. You might have his, outfit. Hey!
Where Kalehua?
Come inside, do we all fit?
Fits perfectly. Ready? 1, 3. 1, 2, 3. Taking Coco, if that's okay.
Yeah, how's about for the Mauna?
Okay.
Here, madam, give me yours. Hold on, we getting there.
We did lose a person, but we're in this good. Okay, he's here.
Ready?
Mauna up, folks.
2, 3. One more. Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you very much. Okay, sure, we put everything back.
Yeah, we supposed to have on camera. We'll be in January.
This one's gonna have to go.